To CrossTalk Drone Surveillance, I'm joined by Medea Benjamin in Washington. She is a co-founder of Code Pink and author of Drone Warfare. Also in Washington, we have Ray McGovern. He is a co-founder of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. And in Dallas, we cross to Christopher Jenks. He is director of the Criminal Justice Clinic and assistant professor of law at SMU Dedman School of Law. All right, folks, CrossTalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want. Medea, if I can go to you first in Washington. When I read Orwell's 1984, I didn't see drones in it, but I think he would have been happy if they had been.
Well, I certainly agree with you there. I think the potential of having these eyes in the sky 24/7 spying on us it could have the potential of turning the U.S. into a surveillance society that would profoundly change the nature of public life in this country.
Okay, Chris in Dallas, what do you say to that?
I think potential is the key word there. I think the prevalence of drones is only going to exponentially increase. Forecasts are that by the end of the decade, there may be as many as 50 to 60,000 unmanned aerial systems of various kinds and types operating here in the U.S. So there certainly are potential concerns.
If I could go back to Washington, Ray, I mean, what are the problematic ones for you? I can think of many.
Well, I think, as Chris suggested, one of the key words is potential. But I would have to say, in my own experience, and I've been around a while, the potential very quickly becomes the actual. I was around when the drones were developed. They were developed for a specific purpose, to have a dwell capability over a certain area, which was not possible for these satellites to keep going around the world, which could photograph this thing maybe once or twice a day. And so the dwell capability was to make sure that we had imagery over a certain location over a period of time. And then some general in the Pentagon said, hey, I'll bet we could put missiles on those things. And sure enough, the potential became the actual. The actual is that upwards of 1,000 civilians have been killed in Pakistan by CIA-run drones. And if you ask whether that's making America more secure, think of that fellow who tried to bomb Times Square and said specifically that as he watched what was happening to his home country, Pakistan, his rage against America increased to the point where he was prepared to blow people up in Times Square.
Medea, what do you think about that? Because people are worried that they could be weaponized, okay? If you have the technology to do it, people will do it eventually.
Well, I think that we could just look at one of the press conferences of the Sheriff's Department outside of Houston. And Chris, you might know of this case when they were actually bragging about how the new drone that they got, thanks to the money from Homeland Security, because you might know, Peter, that most of the police departments in this country are strapped for money, so they don't have extra hundreds of thousands of dollars hanging out to buy some drones. And this one outside of Houston bragged at the press conference about how the drone was designed to be weaponized. So we have seen, as Ray said, how surveillance drones have become lethal drones. We might very well see in this country how drones that are supposed to be for search and rescue operations, or being told that they can help find your elderly grandpa with Alzheimer's who's wandering in the streets, could become a drone that is either armed with less than lethal weapons like stun grenades or even tasers, to something that could be armed with lethal equipment.
Okay, Ray, is that comfort for you?
No, it's really more a question of how they're already being used. Now, I think, Chris, you swore this same solemn oath when you get out of the U.S. Military Academy. But when I was commissioned as second lieutenant of the United States Army, I took a solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I take that oath very seriously. It has no expiration date. The Fifth Amendment of our Constitution says, and I quote, no person, doesn't say no American, it doesn't say no citizen, it says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And for the executive in this country now to reverse 700 198 years of precedent. I'm thinking of the Magna Carta, of course, and all manner of common law and constitutional law, and claim the right to assassinate Americans and foreigners, because foreigners, last time I checked the Bible, they're human beings too, without due process is a tragedy. There are lots of other adjectives and nouns I could use, but it's the first time in my professional life and in my life here in Washington for 50 years where I've become to ask myself, well, what does this oath mean when the executive itself is claiming the right to violate so clearly not only the Fifth Amendment, but especially the Fifth Amendment in this issue?
Okay, Chris, would you like to field that? There was a lot said there.
No, indeed. I would say that I disagree. There is no right. There has never been the right to constitutional due process of an American or anyone who has taken up arms against the United States is significantly different, significantly less than the due process that would otherwise be afforded an American or anyone who is present in the United States. So I think I come out differently on the equation of the use of force against persons who have taken up arms with enemies of the United States.
Okay, Medea, but it looks like a slippery slope to me, okay? Even suspicion abroad, could that be brought home? It already is brought home, by the way, yes.
Let's look at the case.
Right.
Sure. I mean, the fact that under the Obama administration, there have been 3 Americans, including a 16-year-old boy born in Denver, who have been killed by U.S. drones overseas with no acknowledgement by the United States, never any indictment. I don't think a 16-year-old is a high-level leader of al-Qaeda. And then the Congress people have been asking, well, can drones be used to kill people here in the United States? And they have never so far gotten a no. So as far as we understand it, Americans have been killed overseas with these drones without any kind of judicial process, and the same kind of thing can happen, it appears, here in the United States. Why is it illegal for the government to wiretap somebody in the United States without a court warrant, but we don't know, can a drone be used against them to kill them? Well, actually, we know that it could be done overseas, so why couldn't it be done here at home? I would say it's indeed a very slippery slope and a very dangerous and scary slope.
Okay, Chris, if I go back to you in Dallas, what do you, the slippery slope? I mean,
no, I mean, there certainly is that potential. I believe the president in the last week or two, and somewhat of an odd forum to be transmitting policy positions, but in an online question and answer forum, the president was asked essentially that question, the use of drones on Americans or persons in the United States. And the president's response was that the feasibility of lesser forms of force or the feasibility of detention in Pakistan or Afghanistan is a very different proposition than the feasibility of someone here in the U.S. So he did not outright say that we would not use such force, but he contrasted the circumstances in Afghanistan and Pakistan from that here domestically.
All right, Ray, do you want to respond to that real quickly before we go to the break?
Yeah, sure. The question is due process here. I believe, Chris, you're a lawyer. I would hope you take due process of law seriously. You don't do due process in the White House as much as...
Medea, are you satisfied with the domestic discussion on this topic? Because Congress has already acted.
Well, I think there is a big lobby of the drone manufacturers that force through a piece of legislation that will make the Federal Aviation Administration open up U.S. airwaves to drones by September 2015. This is being done by the manufacturers because they look at the 18,000 police stations around this country and they see ka-chung, ka-chung, sales, sales, dollars, dollars. So this is being driven by the industry without the measures in place to guarantee our privacy or to guarantee our safety, because these drones are pretty flimsy. They're still in their early stages of development. They crash all the time. So I am very worried, and I don't think there has been a national discussion about this. In fact, the discussion is now happening on the very local level among communities whose police departments have already bought these drones. And it's very interesting, Peter, to see the kind of heated debates that are happening where in places like Seattle, the mayor has actually had to return those drones to the manufacturers because the community is up in arms about having this new technology without the guarantees that we deserve.
Chris, I saw you agreeing in Dallas. What are you agreeing to?
Basically everything that was just said. For the outgrowth of this technology, it is stunning how little national debate there is. I mean, the president signed legislation in the last week that went little reported, dealing with the FAA and drone integration.
Chris, why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that's the case? Why isn't there more discussion?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think I mean, there certainly is an industry lobby. I mean, I think many Americans might be surprised to know that there is a actual unmanned aerial systems caucus.
Yes, there is.
On Capitol Hill. I also think Americans would be somewhat surprised if you look in the fall of 2012, the organizations that have applied to the Federal Aviation Administration to license and use drones include, not surprising, entities like a host of police departments around the country, but also things like community colleges, an Indian gaming casino, and the Ohio Department of Transportation. At the same time, you have states like Washington, Texas, that are considering legislation restricting their use, and Charlottesville, Virginia has enacted a statute that already does so, I believe the first in the country.
Okay, Ray, why do you think there is little discussion in the United States? Okay, Medea, go ahead, jump in. This is CrossTalk, go ahead. Let's go, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that one of the reasons there's so little discussion is there's so little known. And the list that Chris started to put forth of the communities and the different entities that have licenses to experimentally use drones, that has been a secret list, and it's only thanks to a lawsuit by the Electronic Frontier Foundation that we've gotten some of this information out. But why should it be a secret to the American people which police departments have permits to use drones? What community college have permits? This should be open, and were it open, there would be more public debate about it.
Ray, jump in, go ahead.
Well, I think Medea is right on, and Chris as well. But if you look a little deeper, you say there's no discussion, there's very little publicity. Well, the people who are manufacturing the drones and other instruments of war are the same people that are running the mainstream media. So, you know, you look at cui bono here. Who profits from a lack of discussion from these things? I will add one element here. It's a very encouraging thing that Charlottesville, Seattle, and other places in this country are very sensitive to killing people without due process. My point here is that if enough Americans do not have a direct experience of innocent suffering, okay? If they don't have that kind of experience, they have no way to reflect on what we're doing, and then to perhaps do justice work to stop what we're doing. That's the key, and we'll never know if the captive media doesn't tell us.
What do you think about that?
I mentioned the Magna Carta. The question I have is, 2 years hence, when we are celebrating the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta, which posed extreme restraints on the King of England, gutsy barons doing that, will it be an inquest? Will it be a funeral? What will it be? Will it be a celebration that we stood up and said, look, people have rights. People cannot be summarily interned or executed without due process of law. And so what we have here is extrajudicial, and people sort of yawn and say, well, judicial or extrajudicial, you know. Well, extrajudicial killing is murder, and that's what we're doing in places like Yemen and Somalia and other places where in Pakistan, of course, where we are not at war. That's pure and simple. Now, the fact that those people don't look like us, is that America? Do we not really care because they don't look at it and because we never see it on TV screens? I don't think that's America. I think we have to reform and face up to what we're doing and realize that no person, not no American, but no person under the Fifth Amendment shall be deprived of life without due process of law. The president, no one can act as judge, jury, and executioner. That's what the Magna Carta was all about, and that's what our Constitution is all about.
Chris, do you think that the technology is keeping up with law and the other way around? Go ahead, Chris, real quick.
No, absolutely. The law is significantly behind the technology, decades, if not a generation or more so. When you look at questions like drones or cyber attack, the law regulating the conduct of hostilities lags very, very far behind.
Ray, what do you think about that?
Well, I think Chris is right, but I'd like to hear from Medea.
Medea, go ahead. You get the last word.
Well, I would say that certainly, whether it's domestically or internationally, the law has not kept up with the technology, and we need to change that. And I would also say that if we indeed want to call ourselves a democratic society, we can have policies that are veiled in secrecy. These need to come out into the light, how we're using drones overseas, how we might use them here at home.